The story of St. Paul of the Cross. St. Paul of the Cross, born Paolo Francesco Danei on January 3, 1694, in Ovada, Italy, was the founder of the Passionist Order and a remarkable mystic known for his intense devotion to the Passion of Jesus Christ. His life of prayer, suffering, and preaching the Passion as the greatest proof of God's love has made him one of the Church's most inspiring saints. Paul was born into a deeply religious family, the second of 16 children, though many of his siblings died at a young age. From an early age, Paul demonstrated an intense devotion to God. He was drawn to prayer and led a simple, virtuous life, avoiding worldly pleasures. As a young man, Paul was inspired by the writings of the Desert Fathers and mystics who embraced a life of sacrifice and contemplation. In his early 20s, he had a profound spiritual experience during a sermon about the suffering of Christ. This moment marked a turning point in his life, igniting a deep love for the Passion of Christ and a desire to dedicate himself entirely to God. Despite his father's hope that he would pursue a career in business, Paul felt called to live a life of poverty, prayer, and penance. In 1720, after a period of intense prayer and spiritual direction, he received a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary, who appeared to him dressed in a black habit with the emblem of the Passion of Christ on her chest. In this vision, Mary called him to found a religious congregation dedicated to the Passion of Jesus. Following this mystical experience, Paul withdrew into a period of intense solitude and prayer, living in a small room provided by his bishop. For 40 days, he prayed, fasted, and wrote the rule for what would become the Congregation of the Passion of Jesus Christ, commonly known as the Passionists. This congregation would focus on spreading devotion to the Passion of Christ as the ultimate expression of God's love for humanity. Paul's initial attempts to establish the congregation met with many challenges. For years, he faced opposition and rejections from church authorities who were uncertain about his mission. Nevertheless, Paul remained steadfast in his calling, trusting in God's providence. Eventually, in 1741, Pope Benedict XIV gave Paul permission to formally establish the Passionist Order. The Passionist monks, wearing the black habit Paul had seen in his vision, took vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, and a special vow to promote devotion to the Passion of Jesus. Their mission was to preach about the Passion and lead people to conversion through the message of Christ's sufferings and sacrifice. For nearly 40 years, St. Paul of the Cross traveled across Italy, preaching about the love of God revealed in the Passion of Christ. His preaching was powerful, deeply emotional, and often led to remarkable conversions. He urged people to meditate on Christ's suffering as a source of spiritual strength and renewal. Paul believed that by contemplating the Passion, people could better understand the depth of God's love for them and find the grace to overcome their own sufferings. Paul also founded Passionist retreats, where people could come to meditate on the Passion of Christ in silence and prayer. These retreats offered a place of refuge for those seeking spiritual renewal and a deeper connection with God. The Passionists became known for their commitment to prayer, contemplation, and outreach to the poor and suffering. Throughout his life, St. Paul of the Cross experienced intense physical and spiritual suffering. He endured many illnesses, harsh opposition, and moments of spiritual darkness. However, these trials only deepened his union with Christ, particularly in the mystery of his Passion. Paul saw his own sufferings as a way to participate in the redemptive sufferings of Jesus. Paul's mystical experiences were profound, often entering into ecstasies during prayer. He had vivid visions of Christ and the Virgin Mary, which sustained him during moments of great trial. Despite his deep mystical life, Paul remained humble, always pointing others to the love of God rather than focusing on his own experiences. St. Paul of the Cross spent his final years in Rome, continuing his work of guiding the Passionist Order and preaching the Passion of Christ. He died on October 18, 1775, at the age of 81. By the time of his death, he had founded 12 Passionist monasteries and established a solid foundation for his congregation to continue spreading devotion to the Passion. Paul of the Cross was canonized by Pope Pius IX in 1867. His feast day is celebrated on October 19th. Today, the Passionists continue their work around the world, inspired by Paul's deep love for the Passion of Christ and his tireless dedication to spreading this message. St. Paul of the Cross left a profound legacy of spiritual insight into the redemptive power of suffering. His life's mission was to teach others that through meditating on the Passion of Christ, they could find comfort, strength, and hope in their own trials. His spiritual writings, letters, and sermons continue to inspire Christians to draw closer to God through the mystery of Christ's suffering. He remains a powerful example of how embracing the cross with love and humility can lead to deep union with God. Paul's life of prayer, penance, and preaching the Passion still speaks to all those seeking to understand and live the depth of God's love for humanity.